What's up, world? What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again once more. As usual, I do have a couple slides that I want to share with you in this fine day that we're having. And of course, before we get to those slides, I want to issue a fair use disclaimer for all the material that's going to be shared here in this here video, right? Under fair use, of course. So, what has been happening? Well, the pressure needs to be kept and increased on a war machine that fights vertically or horizontally, and on top of that, any infrastructure supporting, right, resupply, hosting, communications, all of that. Now, what has been happening over here? Well, the Ukrainians are back at it, asking for nukes, right? That will be the best next security guarantee. And of course, we have Stama with the same thieving mentality, targeting shadow tankers. Now, I heard that the Russians are discussing escorts, right, for these vessels, right, with enough firepower to deter any. Well, that will cost you a lot, but rather having a deterrence to even them even thinking about taking those tankers. Whoever takes those tankers, because now they are more desperate, right? That needs to be also added into the calculation. It's not doing so well, right? Trump over there is blackmailing them using the energy supply. They don't know what to do. So they're gonna go back to their thieving ways. Just announced that any port that will anchor these stolen vessels, they'll be struck until the vessel is let free. Or escorts, but surely something needs to be done. Cuba needs to be supplied. There's already talk of invasion and this and that. So, you see that? That is a vehicle on a road being struck from the left, as it seemed, right? From the damage from behind. The strike came from the left of the vehicle, and struck it. Now I'll show you who was the occupant, or rather the occupants of this vehicle here. Yeah, quite a big expose, right, of the man and the myth, right? The one who supposedly has blackmail on everybody else, but everybody else doesn't have nothing on him. Crazy, crazy. Why were they sharing your data anyway? That's my question, right? Because I've been noticing a pattern. These people in their grand plan, I believe they are systematically in important portions of society. They're gonna use this excuse of AI, basically just handing over power to few. That's what it means when they say AI, right? Right? Just another tangent. When they say ICE, they just mean the Gestapo looking for melanated people, right? Because all of these critics of migration, they have no problem with European migrants. So 1 + 1, anyway. Talking about what they want to replace, right? Of course, they're already talking about revolutionizing medicine, right? By basically letting AI randomize. The last project I saw that they did this and they claimed it was successful is they put some data into this artificial intelligence and it synthesized an artificial protein which they presume that would be the cure, right? So I'm talking about full spectrum like that, right? So we have CRISPR, we have AI. It's a dangerous combination, right? So all of these contracts that are being signed front and left, right and center, pertaining to medicine and this and that, this is where it is leading to. And there will be dire consequences. Right? So that is one. And of course, air traffic control is the other. Right? And then we have the border control stuff in there. Right? And basically policing in general. Right? They have already run programs out there, right? They have already had people crying and screaming, defund the police. What exactly happened after those cries were made? And some even downsized. What happened? Palantir stepped in. That's what happened, by my estimation. So it was all a ruse. They organized it for their own benefit, but they make it in a way that you feel like you own it or something, you know. I shall write it down there again, just for record keeping. The things that they are systematically, as I see them, replacing them. So you saw that car that was struck that I showed earlier. Yeah, these were the occupants of that vehicle, right? People should have woken up when they struck those ambulances with criminal intent, and if not enough, they went further to hide evidence of their wrongdoing. So what then? Well, I'm suggesting a change of tactic for these journalists. These vests and helmets are you're just making it easy for them to target you. It's foolish at this point, you know, just like going into a war zone with that blue UN hat and expecting that people won't shoot back because you have a blue hat, which is highly visible, right? A double-edged sword. Use smaller systems, right? Like GoPros, basically action cameras, to collect and get what you want and get rid of this nonsense. If you want to carry an ID, then carry an ID, but don't show it around, right? And that's your job, to mingle with the people undetected by the enemy and to show the world what is actually happening over there. Okay, it's not good. The last time I saw this guy had written already a letter if he were to be killed. Maybe a change of tactic, of approach.
The cult of Baal, B-A-L. My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly, but behind closed doors, you know, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists. They told me that we belonged to the cult of Baal, B-A-L. They told me this with consistency while I was being abused. Now, what you can look up about the cult of Baal, information that is publicly available, is that it is thousands of years old. It is a Phoenician satanic fertility.
Important. We had a conversation about this, right? That under any of these societies that they created, sex is at the epicenter, right? If prophecy says that your seed, all of it, will perish unless your ways change, right? The ways of Cain, they refuse to live that way. So what is the next thing they do? Is spread their seed as far and as wide as they possibly can. Hence, they created these, right? Now, in these whole societies, of course, there is aspect of eugenics and wealth control, and we all know the usual stuff, right? But this is a very important thing. right? It is not about the multiplication of humanity, which is to be regarded as fertility, right? And it's everywhere, brothers and sisters. It's not just this Phoenician god that was even once worshipped by the Israelites, right? And it spread to Babylon, and then it came into Greece and then into Rome. The same habits, right? Look at what the Greeks and the Romans were doing, right? In their bathhouses, they used to call them. The same thing they used to do in the so-called Phoenician bathhouses, in the houses of these elite individuals. You want to know what was happening? Epstein stuff. A lot of it. And even worse. But they used to call it fertility, right? Who would want to, you know? This is why the woman was at the center of these cults, even now, right? Just imagine, right? Just imagine, and let's accumulate what they have told us so far. They believe that a man or a woman, for them to achieve godhood, they have to reach at least a physical state of androgyny, right? Be like the angels, androgynous, right? Meaning having both sexes, right? Hence we have characters who have reached this status, right? We have people like Prince, right? We have this other guy from the UK with the funny glasses, and you know, androgynous, right? So at all times you have to understand that if they are initiated and they present to themselves as men, then underneath they are women, and if they present themselves as women, then underneath they are men, right? And physiology cannot lie. You can try to alter it chemically, but it cannot lie. So this is the situation that we are having here, right? And they call it fertility, while it leads to demise, right? It leads to less reproduction as per intended, so-called, right? In the movie Matrix, I remember mentioning this example, right? You remember those quote-unquote dances they were having on Zion underground? Yes, originally that was an orgy, originally. So I'm telling you this so as you understand and know the characteristics of these, the consistent characteristics of these societies, right? They use the women, fertility, right? You can't have fertility without the women, okay? So that needs to be understood. This whole goddess stuff is just like the Statue of Liberty. It's a man, but it is dressed like a woman. Androgynous, or what they call achieving godhood, right? Let's go back to where we are, right?
Satanic fertility cults. And publicly.
And it's not just this one, right? All of them, they're like that. All of them, they're like that. Okay? what they do in that wall over there, thrusting, what do you think they are doing over there? People are going to catch on.
It's supposed to have been eradicated, but to my knowledge and my experience, it is not. This is what people perceive the Illuminati to be. It is a group of elites that practices forced and uses these crimes to control people. They happen to have a huge reach over politics and entertainment.
Right? Just like how the world was shaped, right, by politicians and entertainers who are politicians in their own way. Right? Just how, for instance, theater, right, has influenced generations. Right? Now we have the Netflix, we have the Disneys, we have all of these bodies. They are tools for control. And you would be safer if you consume these materials knowing that they are poison, or rather poisonous to the unknowing. If you know it is poison, it won't affect you. It will actually be beneficial, because then you'd get a deep dive into their mind and how they think and how they operate and what exactly they want to convince you is true. Right? How much effort do they put into it, basically?
So your basic question, why my family does this, because it was done to them, because having one man bear as many children in a generation as possible and forcing them through these traumatic events, they believe it creates a stronger bond, that creates more loyalty, that it keeps people from talking. And for the most part, they're right, because I'm the only one of my siblings who has directly spoken out about this.
The ancient cults and the bloodlines that continue to these generations. And I think you're the first survivor who's actually detailed how that has continued over the ages. So if you could maybe expand on that a little bit, I think the viewers would find this fascinating.
What specifically would you like expanded on?
So, all of that talk that was happening a couple weeks back, where Zelensky came out and said, we are willing to help to deal with Iran, and Trump said, we don't need you, that is untrue. They're much over there, right? The war happened in the back wall, huh?
1440, French nobleman Gilles de Rais convicted of ritually murdering over 100 children. Court transcripts. For what? Occult rituals. Testimony describes offering body parts to demons for power and wealth.
Yeah, it's a thing, right? Apocalypto tried to give you a dive of what was that was like, right? It's accurate, very accurate. It was very morbid over there, the Aztecs. They were impressive, yes, But of course, what can also be cannot be ignored, right, is the rot underneath, right? The rot underneath, right? They were opening up people's chests, taking out their beating hearts and burning them. Yeah, pretty morbid. Now the things have gone underground, but they still persist.
Parts. The trial records describe extraction rituals. 1950s, researchers Hoffer and Osmond discovered adrenochrome, oxidized adrenaline. Published studies show it causes altered mental states when terror floods the body. How would you even extract that from someone? 1971, Hunter S. Thompson wrote, "Adrenal glands of a living human body. No good if you get it out of a corpse." Hold on, you're saying they have to kill people for this? Look at the pattern. 1996, Marc Dutroux builds underground chambers for children in Belgium. 27 witnesses died during the investigation. 27 people died? Ruled accidents and suicides. 2016, Dennis Hastert, U.S. Speaker of the House, third in line for the presidency, convicted serial child molester. The Speaker of the House? Served 13 months. 2019, Jeffrey Epstein, private island, powerful visitors, flight logs. But that's trafficking, not Ronald Bernard, elite Dutch banker.
Yeah, for you who have not seen this, you need to listen to this interview here. Right, you can see the horror, right? Because then he has reached a point, you know, he has reached a point where there is no other higher ceiling to go, because everything above that is being controlled, right? Then ambition comes into play. That's why it's a terrible idea. Right? And he goes into detail to exactly what they asked him to do, right?
Described on camera being invited to a child sacrifice ritual.
Sacrifice of children.
Refused. Left the industry. The chemical exists. The convictions exist. The testimony exists. 1440.
So I'm going to take you down one of the deepest rabbit holes you'll ever go down, starting with Albert Pike. First of all, Albert Pike was a 33rd degree Freemason, the highest rank. He wasn't just a general or a writer, he was a literal architect. The architect that built the moral software of their system. And when I say their, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Albert's script, which do keep in mind, this man was literally alive during the 1800s, okay? This is what he decided to write about. The What Plan for 3 World Wars, August 15th, 1871. First World War must be brought about in order to permit the what to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. Talking about 40 plus years before World War I. Says the divergences caused by the agents of the what between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. Look at how specific this is. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religion. Second World War.
Well, there are those people who are familiar with this here later. What I'm trying to say is that this is not prophecy. Okay? This is not prophecy. They are the Illuminati, right? They are the powers behind the czars, right? After they took out the black nobility, who took over? The Ashkenazi. Okay? And of course, the whole idea of communism, and these ideas have originators, right? So they engineer prophecies, right? They engineer prophecies just like they engineer everything, right? They support both sides, basically.
between the fascists and the political Zionists. War must be brought about so that what is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of what and where. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social
right? The whole idea of Christendom, right? This cold calculating, even Muslims are like that, you know. If they are some actually, right? Even in the Christian, some, right? Because somebody is a Muslim, they don't treat them with any dignity or respect as a child of God, you know. It's disappointing, right? That they see themselves as the only worthy. And I don't know who taught them that, but they need this polarization for their own ends, right? Because the Christians and the Muslims know damn well they have no capability to save a soul. That is none of your business. That is beyond your capacity. All you can do and all you are required to do is exactly love yourself like, love your neighbor like how you love yourself. Plain and simple. But again, people are losing the plot every day. Why? Because they are falling for this polarization, so as they can both be destroyed, and they deserve to be destroyed because they are not standing on the right side of truth, either party, so to speak. But again, I don't think that the war in the Middle East will somehow lead the world to forget Islam. Like what? Or Christian, or what? Right? Because of some war, Christianity will vanish. Or really? I believe it will be recommendered, if you catch my drift. Because it was commandeered by the evil entities. It's gonna be taken back, and now people are gonna have a choice, right? Those who had this mask of Christianity while behind hiding white supremacy, then we are gonna have a reality check when they just find out Christ was like a black Bantu person. Then, because we have proven we don't care, okay? We have proven we do not care in that regard, okay? In that regard, you brought us a foreign god, we worship that foreign god, okay? Now it's time you pay for your errors that I don't know you did how long. And still, you're continuing with your false prophet here, Albertina Pike.
cataclysm. Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the what, once again, between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. And the war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. And everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers or civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity. The deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of...
There goes that word, manifestation.
Lucifer brought finally out into the public view. Please tell me how the fuck that is a coincidence. I guess Albert Pike just had a wild sense of imagination, right? Just saying, how much do you believe in time travel? You look into a series of books written by somebody named Ingersoll Lockwood, two of them that are just way too accurate. And so many names mentioned in these books are way too familiar. I am doing a full video on that tomorrow, actually.
It's not time travel. They are both parties. They have commandeered both parties. That's what they have been doing. They infiltrate and they agitate, basically conspiring. It's a conspiracy. Alright? And people are still in this belief that these things are not planned. That these provocations, you can have one side that is unwilling, but if the other, for instance, where the confrontation between the Zionists and the Muslims and the Christians, the Muslims nor the Christians did not attack each other, nor did they conspire to attack the Zionists. But the Zionists conspire. They are actively conspiring, right? Like a couple of videos were floating around last week, right? They are saying the very existence and the flourishing of America is connected to their assistance to Israel. If that goes away, then bad things happen. Do you think they're gonna wait for God to rain down hail? And no, they're gonna do terroristic activities and stuff. So it's not time travel. No, it's a conspiracy. Oza way, kama kao, right? It's a conspiracy, plain and simple, right? It's a conspiracy, a satanic conspiracy, right? As you can see, there's no the word Satan in here anywhere. So this is not prophecy. These wars, they are in Revelation. All of them. They're in Revelation. They didn't predict nothing about nothing. But this is their attempt to control the narrative, to take themselves out of the equation, so to speak. Right? Because after the Zionists and the Christians and the Muslims lose their compass, as they say, and they will be looking around for a Messiah after everything of theirs has been unraveled. What do you think they are not talking about? What about these cults? Or rather the quote-unquote New Age doctrine? Again, don't be distracted by all of this document. It all comes down to sex, right? Racism, sex. They don't want to tell you this. They don't want to admit it. And I know how they trigger them. I know how. Someday, some way, we're going to address it. But now let them change their masks and all of this. But the only genuine solution to the end of any race war, what is it? Well, we thought it was a African problem or a filter problem. What is this obsession? Well, it is almost at a genetic level at this point. This trauma, right? This is trauma, brothers and sisters. This is trauma moved from parents to children. It is not like I said prior, like in DNA. No, it is trauma. which trickles down from the older generation to the younger generation. Because in this world, being close to having a pale skin represents a lot of benefits. A lot of benefits. Right? It is acceptable. By the so-called beauty standard, it's actually preferable. Right? If you don't call that eugenics, but I don't know. They showed up and showed out. Everywhere. The war is just beginning. So do not say that you were not told. Okay? And add the news agencies also. Right? They struck Al Jazeera, we were watching. They struck, what was it? The Yemenis or the Iranian? What was it? That woman that was presenting, and then boom, all of a sudden a bomb hit. And she still continued. Added to.
Hey, when did the Rothschilds come to America? Officially, they really started making noise about 1837. That was our first big crash. And what about after that? When they got here, what did they start doing? Businesses, infrastructure, railroads were big for them, and they would eventually start doing business with the mortgage, JP Morgan. Okay, so like, at what point did they like grab our country by the balls? Well, that would be about 1895, 1896-ish. That's when JP Morgan and the Rothschilds bailed out the entire country of America because we're running out of gold. And so they said, hey.
Again, do not fall for this. This guy, the Rothschild, these are just fronts. Okay? These are groups of men that funded this endeavor. They actually caused the crash. So they're not actually your saviors. No, they're the ones that doomed you. Systematically, they caused the crash. They engineered it from within. They are behind so many things that have happened over the past, I don't know how long. And now you might ask, these are only people. They don't even get to live to 100. How then do they achieve continuity? Here is where the spiritual aspects comes into play. The so-called fallen angels, I keep telling you. They are the real custodians of these plans that can go on for thousands of years, corroding humanity from within meticulously and slowly and efficiently. Because at any given moment there are less of them. Right? You don't ever see shepherds having a larger number than the sheep, right? We being the sheep in that.
We have $45 million worth of gold. Want it? I imagine there was a little bit of, quid pro quo there. Daggone. And then there's 1910, the Jekyll Island meeting after the 1907 bank panic that led to the 1913 formation of the Federal Reserve. And that was all because of an island that they met at that was owned by JP Morgan. And then the boat that sank that was owned by JP Morgan that kept the Federal Reserve's naysayers from getting to meetings. And now we have a central bank that's controlled by Rothschild Rockefeller money. Jeez. And then when that's not to mention the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, they pressured America heavy to finance it. Even the Civil War, they were on both sides in the Napoleonic War. And guess what? The first thing our central bank funded after it was founded in 1913. 1913, that would be, did they fund, oh God. 6 months later, World War I. Well, that's
all bad, but at least it stopped.
Shortly after that, Britain would write them a letter saying, hey, that land in the Middle East that you want, we're going to give it to you, Mr. Rothschild. Israel, it's all yours.
Oh.
The reason you can't afford an engagement ring or a wedding band, it's because of the Rothschilds and the De Beers Diamond Company. In the mid-80s, they created an M&A company. An M&A company is a merger and acquisition company. Think private equity, but before private equity. And guess what they did with...
We might need to slow down, but what did they do with it?
We're using it to get involved in Wall Street. They wanted to infiltrate the New York Wall Street monster that had been forming in America. You want to know what they did to do that?
What did they do?
They did it by sending somebody to New York City to oversee the purchase of Macmillan Inc. Macmillan Inc. was a media company that would be McGraw-Hill, which is responsible for a lot of the elementary school books that you and I were raised on. Do you want to know who they sent to New York City in 1988 to do this? Robert Maxwell. He was in partnership with Robert Maxwell. And when Robert Maxwell would go on to die on his yacht because he owed the Mossad money, guess who he also owed about 50 million pounds to? The Rothschild family through the Bank of England.
Wait, Robert Maxwell's, that's Ghislaine Maxwell's father? Is connected to the Rothschild?
That's right. Robert Maxwell, along with Roy Cohn, had been running a corporate blackmail ring throughout the entire world run by the Mossad. And when he died, Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein took on the reins. That's why they had been introduced only 6 months prior to his death. After that, they would go on to infiltrate people like the princes, the politicians, and the media moguls that we know today. And we know through Alan Dershowitz, Epstein's lawyer through 2008-2009, admitted that he was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein in the early 90s by a Rothschild.
I was introduced to him by the lady in Lord Rothschild.
Wow.
Okay, well, we don't have proof that Epstein worked for Rothschild. Here's an email from Epstein over to Peter Thiel. Says, as you know, I represent the Rothschild family.
But maybe only represented a few of them. Maybe he didn't represent the whole family.
Here's his wrinkly old pervert Les Wexner saying he represented the whole family.
And personal work for the Rothschild family in France. He represented their whole family.
Okay, what am I supposed to do with this?
Tag Howard Lutnick.
I think that's what we could do, because I believe he's a Mossad plant that's currently being seeded by the Rothschild family in a place precariously right next to Jeffrey Epstein.
All because he's his neighbor? Like, he just maybe bought the home on Zillow.
He didn't. He bought the home in 1998 from the Comet Trust, which was run by the son of the World Jewish Congress founder and World Zionist Foundation organizer. Also before that, it was owned by Jeffrey Epstein himself.
Well, just because he owned it doesn't mean, like, it was his house or anything like that, or ever lived there, or, like, that.
Come on, Jeffrey Epstein would actually live there in 1992, starting right after things got serious with Ghislaine, so they would probably be shagging or doing whatever from 92 to 95 in that property before moving over into the other property, which will remain vacant for about 3 years before Jeffrey Epstein gets to pick his neighbor. It happens to be the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, who would profit off of 9/11, survive 9/11, and also then use Cantor Fitzgerald with his sons at the helm to profit off of the very tariff being shot down in the Supreme Court that he helped form.
So, you basically think Howard Lutnick is, like, a really high-level crisis actor?
Yeah, I thought of it that way. Yeah, that's exactly what I think. What a liar. Lutnick the liar, that's what I call him.
Remember that early day COVID administrators, right? The people who were, again, it's a conspiracy. These people are not nothing about nothing. They are diabolically and enthusiastically evil, for lack of better terms. And we have been extremely adorable, gullible, naive, stupid even sometimes people. Hence, we have been led to the slaughter over and over, over and over, over and over. So,
Hirschfeld, an atheist Jew, was the first homosexual and transsexual advocate of the 20th century, and also performed the first sex reassignment surgery.
again, you know, these people, I want people to think of it like this, right? How did he become the most prominent This is why they are killing journalists. Narrative control. So if you want to beat them, then make everybody a journalist. Whatever they're trying to hide has to come to light. Hence the GoPros. Okay, that's another minor tangent, right? But again, in this conspiracy, total control is important. To have control levels of escalation, everything that is not coincidental, right? People need to understand that it's not coincidental. These people conspire. You are hoping that the ballot box, this gamble, will give you results. They don't do that. I would do that. Okay, if I want results, I plan for results. I don't gamble with voting. Okay, this is just one-on-one tactician knowledge right here. Like, are you serious? The whole premise of planning is to have things under control, not out of control, meaning random. Am I making sense, or am I moving too fast?
Carl M. Bayer, a Zionist Jew born in Germany, was the first female-to-male transgender surgery. Back in the United States, all the major lobbying organizations for transgenderism and child gender confusion is done by, you guessed it, God's not-so-chosen people. National Center for Transgender Equality, founded by Mara Kiesling, a Jew. Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, founded by Jillian Weiss and Michael Silverman, both Jews. GLSEN, or Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, directed by Eliza Bayer.
Yeah. So when the scripture says, when they take over, these kings, evil will spread all over the world, this is what it was talking about, right? They are both the abortion capital of the world and the gay capital of the world. Like, wow.
A Jew. TSER, Trans Student Educational Resources, founded by Eli Ehrlich, and Sylvia Rivera Law Project, a legal aid organization that advocates trans rights, founded by trans activist Dean Spade, both of which are Jews. Hirschfield, an atheist Jew, was the first homosexual...
Correction, Satanists. Satanists. These are the people that believe in such things, right? And all of those people who have been swept from their feet, right, to fall in such type of behavior. It's like moonwalking, but sexually. It's the same thing. It's the inversion of reality. Satanism, right? We know it so well here in Tanzania. Here we have our long-held beliefs. And we know and we understand that chaos appears out of order. That inversion of order creates chaos. Okay?
advocate of the 20th century. TSER, Trans Student Educational Resources, founded by Eli Ehrlich, and Sylvia Rivera Law Project, a legal aid organization that advocates trans rights, founded by trans activist Dean Spade, both of which are Jews. Hirschfield, an atheist